So Chris, Guru Nation, like, subscribe, comment, share. Chris has been having a rough day. But what? You just talked to somebody who wants to be a site owner. This is important because mostly site owners are going to be watching this video anyways.
So potential client, right?
Right.
And I spoke to this person before who's a doctor. Nice enough guy. I mean, he seems like a nice guy, but just, I don't know, maybe because he has quite the accent. So I don't know if there's some sort of language barrier there or not, but so we're talking about who can be a coordinator, right?
Okay.
I said, and this guy's a doctor and he's licensed in America. And I said, well, doctor, anybody you designate, right? That's on you. And he's like, so they don't need any specific education or certification? I was like, no. And he said,
True,
so
very true.
Yeah. And so he started asking about the CRC Academy that we offer.
Great product.
And I said, if you hire somebody that's research naive, then you probably want to put them through this program if they're going to be your coordinator. You want them to have some sort of training, if not experience, right?
Okay.
And so here was his response. So he's going to hire a foreign doctor, right?
They work well.
And they won't need any training because they're a doctor and they're smart. And I said, so I said, well, yes, of course they're smart, but being a doctor is different than being a coordinator. Two entirely different fields, and one does not mean you can do the other. He said, yes, but they're a doctor. They're smart. I was like,
so this is actually a great
I got my
topic
response,
of its own.
Which I believe made the point. I said, so I understand. Yes, I completely agree. Doctors are smart. However, if my car engine breaks down, can that doctor being smart just go fix my car?
A very good comeback.
And he said, and he chuckled. And he said, with training, certainly they could. I said, exactly, training.
Exactly. So did you sell him then?
He wants me to email him everything. I'm emailing him our package contract, our flyer, and our monthly
Chris,
contract.
I'm impressed. That's a great job of right there of like using logic. So, and this is not the topic of this video. If you guys watching, you clicked on what triggers site audits, you didn't expect this to come along, but guess what? Being a coordinator, you're dealing with site audits. And we have a client, Chris, who just had 3 audits, but by 3 different companies. They are high and rolling. So that's the answer to your first question. What typically triggers an audit?
Top 3.
Sometimes they're random, but most of the time, if you're top 3 enroller and it's an important enough study, meaning a pivotal trial, like a phase 3, but not necessarily. Sometimes it could be a phase 2 as well. You'll probably get audited. Your likelihood of getting audited increases. Your probability of getting audited.
You can be audited for phase 4 studies as well, but it's a lot less likely.
Yeah. Now there's FDA audits, there's sponsor audits, there's CRO audits, and then there are like IRB audits. So FDA audits for sure, number 1. But a sponsor audit as well, same thing. Sponsor and CRO audits, same thing. Okay. So high enroller, no matter if it's FDA, sponsor, or CRO, high enroller, you're a target. That's for sure. Yeah. So top 3 sites typically are the ones that get audited. Another trigger is being an outlier on the data. And this is where you won't be privy to this info because only sponsors get to see this. But if, let's say, on average, sites are generating 3 queries per visit, and your site's generating 30 queries per visit, you're getting audited. Something's wrong with your process there. Or if sites are on average reporting 3 AEs per patient by visit 10, and you have 0 AEs per patient on average by visit 10, potential audit. So there's enrollment-based audits, there's performance-based audits, there's random audits. Sometimes FDA just randomly picks Sometimes sponsors just randomly pick. Maybe it's a new PI. Sponsor wants to do more studies with them. And they say, hey, this site has potential. Let's go audit them, right? You might get a random sponsor audit that way. Our client, Chris, I'm not going to mention name. I won't even mention gender, but you probably know who it is. They just got a sponsor audit. This is their third sponsor audit for 3 different studies. They passed both audits with flying colors. This last one, they said the auditors were accusatory of them committing fraud to the point where they interviewed every staff member and tried to interrogate them. So I told them this is inappropriate, but they're adamant they're not committing fraud. So, like, one of the issues was the ePros were all transmitting at a certain time where the auditors didn't understand how that's happening other than fraud. Well, it turns out it's a technical glitch where these e-diaries don't work. And so sometimes they all upload at the same time. So the auditor is accusing the site of fraud. It's a sponsor audit. And I helped the client of ours craft an email to send back to the sponsor saying, hey, it's not the audit we're against. It's the manner in which they did it. I can't have a work environment where my staff members are crying because of your auditor's actions, which is reflective of you. I suggest retraining the auditors. So anyways, point of that story is if you do get an audit, it's going to be nerve-wracking, but you have to stand up for yourself too, especially when the auditors are looking for things or when they already maybe have preconceived idea of what's happening before they even get there. You got to stand up for yourself. So that's what I got to say.
I spoke with a client of ours yesterday. I don't think it was the same client you're referring to because they were just in general asking questions about audits, but they didn't mention anything about being audited. So
this different client.
Yeah, and what I told them in regards to sponsor audits, that they're not necessarily auditing your site either. A lot of times they might be auditing your CRA. So I'm just saying that to alleviate concerns that some people watching this video may have. It doesn't necessarily mean you're problematic. Matter of fact, I think Breakthrough, one of our sites, down in my sites, I think it's been sponsor audited 4 times. I think 2 times it was because of the CRA, just checking up on the CRA. So
good point.
It's very common.
Now, what was your experiences with these auditors and your own experience?
They pretty much just keep them to themselves. I mean, they come to you.
So they're not interrogating you.
No, I've never had that happen.
See, this person had it, and I think it's because of where they are located. It's a hot spot for fraud, and they got thrown into it with everyone else. And I told them to reply to the sponsor that it's not appropriate to stereotype a site to the point of making employees almost want to quit when you're not doing anything wrong.
Yep. And then in regards to the FDA audits, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but I would say for cause audits, which you kind of again touched on, but not entirely, is the other reason for audits. That's where somebody's complained about the site to the FDA, or even the sponsors complain about the site to the FDA.
Break that one down.
Well, I mean, again, you already kind of touched on it where the sponsor sees an outlier in data, and they may bring this up to the FDA. That's kind of a for-cause audit, but more concerning to a sponsor, or at least for certain that they would report to the FDA, would be if they suspect fraud. So, there's just the CRA catches something that definitely seems like fraud, of course, reports it to the sponsor, and in turn, the sponsor, I think, is obligated to report this to the FDA. And that would be a for-cause audit. Or another for-cause audit would be complaints by patients. But oftentimes that would fall under the IRB opposed to the FDA. I would say IRB audits are probably the least common.
Yeah, I've had one. I've had one, and what triggered that one was what makes those ones kind of annoying. Those are like the wild card, but what triggered that one was the same issue happening over and over. So I can't remember what the issue was. Probably something to do with consent, based on one of my coordinators back then. This was 10 years ago. And so I was told we would have IRB audit, and not only will they audit the study that you're doing, like all the deviations for, but any study that's under their IRB umbrella will be audited. So they were one of the big IRBs, so they audited. They asked for the files for like 4 studies.
Wow.
And I met with the guy, and the guy was a pastor. So their auditors are like, they have to have a background in research, but they're not. IRBs are different because they hire people on the boards that are representative of the communities. Not all their employees, but certainly on the board. So this guy came from the board, but he was a pastor, but he had some experience with research. So I just ended up talking to him about church a lot, and he was happy. He was happy with that. But it actually went really well. I think the guy didn't know much about research. So he asked me, well, why are these issues happening? I told him it's a new staff. We're training them, which was the truth. And he said, okay, well, it only took like 3-4 hours, and he left. So it was like pretty easy. But yeah, well, the IRB audits are like wild cards because I've only had one, but they can go a bunch of ways. If you get one of the big IRBs to audit you and they find something wrong, you can't work. If they say it's bad enough that they will not approve your site anymore for future studies.
Yeah, you might lose a third of possible studies if they're big enough.
Yeah, so don't repeat. And the way to avoid IRB audits is don't repeat the same deviation over and over and over and over again, because they'll eventually come audit you too.
Yep.
So that's in a nutshell audits plus Chris's great rant / sales pitch for a site owner. All you site owners out there, welcome. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Chris is in the site, not in the Bronx. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.